Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. This one's going to be very interesting. I've wanted to do this video for quite a while, but obviously I was just trying to choose with the topic. I was trying to choose my favourite two stories. They are true stories, by the way. Yeah, like I said, there's loads. This phenomenon, which is a strong word for me, happens. It's happened a lot over the past with a lot of different people from all over the world, but these two are from Britain. And I think they're very interesting and they are my favourite ones. So yes, let's get straight to it and I'll explain what it all is and tell you these two true claims, stories about what's happened to these people. It's very interesting. So it's all about reincarnation. So reincarnation is when people die and they reincarnate. The spirit, their energy, the soul goes into another body. Which is sort of reborn again, and this person will grow up and live a life, but also get visions or dreams of what happened in a previous life. So it's like anybody sort of going to sleep or having a dream or doing meditation or hypnosis and having visions and things from that just don't make sense, but yet they do feel like they make sense because obviously you've lived it, and a lot of people feel as though they know a place, although they've never physically been there. So it's all very interesting. So then this first story comes from a woman called Jenny Cockell, who is a British woman who lives in Northamptonshire. There's a programme on well, it's an old programme now. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't want to get copyright thingy, but it's an old paranormal sort of show where a load of people will tell their paranormal experiences, and it's all sometimes even like myths can get on there as well, like creatures and different sort of things. But yeah, it's a brilliant program. So yes, there was two reincarnation stories on here, and these are the ones I'm going to show you because obviously they're both from Britain. So yeah, there's a woman called Jenny Cockell, and ever since she was a child she had dreams and visions of being a woman called Mary Sutton, who is from Ireland and Dublin specifically. There's a village there in Dublin, a bit higher up north of Dublin, called Malahide. And ever since she was, a young girl, she's been having these dreams and visions of being this older woman, who I think was 32. And she had many children. She had a husband who was abusive. So much detail, from a child. And obviously as she's grown up, she's, discovered hypnosis and things and meditation. And while she's been doing them sort of sessions, she's discovered all sorts of things about her past life, about being this Mary, who I can put a photo of now because there is a photo of her with one of her children. During one of her hypnosis sessions, she had a vision of standing on the edge of this dock, like on the edge of the sea. Obviously, with Dublin being there on, especially at Malahide, it's like a coastal village, and she remembers standing on this dock, waiting for like a little boat to come back, and she couldn't quite figure it out. And after a few sessions, it turns out that she was actually waiting for one of her children, who used to work on an island that was close by, and she used to wait for him regularly to come back from work every evening. So that's an interesting thought. She also had all these visions of walking around in this village, and so she knew everything. She even drew a picture of this church from what she could see in her visions in her mind, and she drew this church, so she's always kept that with her. And she also went to the local library to get a map, and specifically a map of Dublin and Malahide. And she drew these maps that she could see in a vision, the streets and the roads, the road names, the buildings that were there. And with it being in the 1930s, I'm not sure if I mentioned that, it was in the 1930s when she lived as Mary. And she got an old map from that village from the 1930s. And honestly, every bit of drawing that she did of the maps, the street names, was identical. It was absolutely identical. It is amazing, absolutely identical. So she actually made a few phone calls to some people, and she ended up saving and going over to Dublin, to Malahide. And when she got there, she felt like she knew. Well, no, she didn't feel like she knew where she was going. She did know where she was going, and she ended up walking around this village that she's never been there before. She's never been there before ever. But like I say, from her visions, as from being as Mary, and the memories and the dreams. She knew her way around. She found the church that she drew on the paper, and it was identical. She couldn't believe it. And it turns out that the phone call was actually to one of, it was to this man. I can't remember his name. It was to this man, and she's saying, look, you know, blah, 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 blah. And he's thinking, a bit strange, you know. So we ended up meeting up with her. It turns out that this man was actually her child, one of her children from the past life. And it turns out that he was the one that used to go and work on this island. So obviously she's telling him about, you know, being Mary and everything, and he's absolutely astonished that she knows so much about his family. And obviously he's never met her before, and obviously she's never met him before, yet everything that she's saying about their family in the past is absolutely correct. So obviously after a while, there is no way that she wasn't Mary. And then what she ended up doing then was actually, from meeting one of her children, this man obviously got in touch with some of his siblings, because obviously she had many children. He got in touch with some of his siblings to come and meet Jenny, and which they did. They were all astonished, and it turns out that she actually ended up reuniting all of the children together again. They've not seen each other in years. Some of them's not even seen each other since they got separated, because after when Mary died, she died when she was 32, obviously in the 1930s, and obviously she's had visions of being Mary, being in pain, alone in bed, you know, not from, she says that she weren't at home at this point, we don't know where she were, and she ended up dying, everything went black. And it turns out that after Mary died, the children all went to an orphanage. The husband just had shut of them, and they never saw each other again. They all went to different orphanages. So since then, all the children have all met up together, siblings, so she's ended up reuniting all the family with her there as well, and they all met up and had a chat, and they all went out on a little walk through the village, and she ended up finding the remains of the cottage that they used to live in, and obviously they were all abandoned in ruins, in the bushes. The end, she ended up finding it, they've been walking through it, all the memories are coming back. It's absolutely astonishing. It is really unbelievable how it can happen like that. It's absolutely amazing. Now this next one is one of my favourites. It's so interesting. It's unbelievable. So there was a man called Peter Hull who was from Birmingham. I think he's passed away since. But while he was alive, he also was interested in hypnotherapy. It turns out his brother got interested in doing hypnosis, and he started going down that path. And this Peter suddenly just got the urge that he just needed to do it, and he didn't really know why. He wasn't really interested in it until his brother got interested in it. So he thought, I'll give it a go. So he gave it a go, and after a few sessions, he started having visions about going to church. And he was telling his brother who was doing it, you know, I'm at a church. The church is called St. Michael's. He was there praying. He was there with his wife Elizabeth, and his child Isabel, who he called Izzy as a nickname. You know, so that's something that's quite intricate there. You know, he used to call his child Izzy. And his name, he says, well, you know, do you know what your name is? And he says, yeah, my name's John Raphael. And the year was 1638, so that's even longer than Jenny's story in the 1930s. This man is going back to the 1600s, and he says, "Well, do you know what can you tell me about? You know, it turns out he was a foot soldier in Cromwell's army. So imagine that. That's something really remarkable." So obviously, after a few sessions, Peter and his brothers went on a bit of a trip. It turns out the church where he was, you know, visioning was in a place called Haleham in Nottinghamshire, St. Michael's. So they actually went to the church, and as soon as he got there, everything felt familiar to him, and obviously they all went inside the church. But when he went in, it was like, whoa, something's not right here. And his brothers are like, why? He said, well, the altar is there. He says, but when I used to come in, meaning when he was John Raphael, the altar was at the complete other end of the church. So it's like the altar's been moved, which is confusing. Literally the whole church has been shifted. So he's thinking, well, that's bizarre, you know, that doesn't usually happen. So they went to find the church warden, who was like, no, it's nonsense. The church is, you know, it's never changed. The altar's always been in this in this corner. It's never altered. So they've sort of gone, you know, now he's like, no, it's, no, I'm telling you, it's moved. The warden's like, it's not moved, you know, just don't be silly. So, but apparently during the interview, the church warden was like, maybe. So he ended up looking at some old plans from the 1600s of the church. It's not wrong. The altar has never moved. It's always been in the same area as it was. It says, but the thing that has moved was the entrance. So whereas the entrance that Peter would have gone in with his brothers was at this end, but in his past life, when he was John Raphael, when he came in with his family, would have been at the other end. So back then, when he walked in, the altar would have been at the opposite end because the doors changed. So he's not wrong. The altar's not moved, but the entrance has. And the entrance got moved in the 1890s. So that's quite astonishing. So he was right. They ended up going on another little trip together, Peter and his brothers, to this field that he felt drawn to. And he was saying, I'm telling you something now, this field was where our old camp used to be when he was in Cromwell's army. And he's thinking, yeah, honestly, this is where the camp were, you know, this is where we used to eat, drink, and we had a fire and all this, you know, like a camp. And archaeologists have since been there because there's never been any sort of documented evidence of any camp being there in that area, at least. There has been in other bits, but not in that area. So they sort of were a bit, until they did some digging and they ended up finding some musket balls, which dated back to the 1600s when Cromwell's army was around. So there must have been something there. So once again, Peter wasn't wrong. There must have been something there. And this bit's amazing. He ended up going on a TV show talking about his experiences. It was I can't remember the name of the TV show. I don't think it was revealed, but it's a show where people talk about paranormal experiences, and he was on there talking about his reincarnation. And obviously he's given his story, and after the show he sort of come off and he had a phone call. And it turns out the woman who called him knew him. She says, I'm telling you now, when in your past life I knew you. And she says, do you want to know how I knew you? And he's like, why? He's like, because I was your daughter. And he's thinking, right. So he's questioning her, saying, all right, so what did we do on this day? What's your name? What was the nickname that I give you? And she said, he asked, says, do you remember on one, I can't remember which bit, it could have been a 10th birthday. He was thinking, right, you remember on your 10th birthday? And she's like, yeah. She's like, what did I give you as a present? And it turns out that she said he made a little wooden horse. He was like, yes. He says, but what was on the wooden horse? And she says, like green ribbon. And he was like, yes. And after a conversation, it turns out that this woman who randomly was watching the TV show and called him was his daughter in the past life, in the same past life. So how weird's that? Do you know what I mean? Everything that obviously he's never met that woman is a total random phone call. So there must be something. There must be something. So I thought, after being sort of watching it and starting to get into all the spirituality things over the years, I thought, why don't I try and give it a go? So I sort of looked at a past life regression video on YouTube. And there are some good ones out there. Obviously, it is good to go to an actual person, but it is possible to do these meditations at home. So I thought, it's a nice quiet afternoon, I'm going to give it a go. And the video was over an hour long, and I've jotted everything down in my book, all the information that I came up with. And I'll tell you something very bizarre, and it's very similar to his, but obviously not the same. So I've not sort of copied him or anything. It's similar, but it is different, at the same time. So the whole duration of the past life regression meditation that I did was 42 minutes. So that's quite a long time. It literally felt like 10 minutes when I was doing it. But obviously she's guiding you and saying, you'll have to do it yourself, obviously. But with some of the information, the spirit animal that I had was a fox. And the weird thing is, ever since that, and I found out about that, every single day near enough, I see something to do with a fox. Whether it's outdoors or videos, pictures in books that I'm reading, oracle cards, foxes are just appearing all of a sudden, which is quite random. But anyway, so I'll read it all out for you. It's not a lot, but it's some, it's a start. And there is it's not a lot, but there's some good information in there. So the year was 1321, which is the medieval period. It was in the north of England. I was a male. I was 32. And my name was either Joseph or Joseph. I feel like it was more Joseph. Joseph Faulkner, which is an interesting name, was with a woman called Clementine. We had a child called Jezebel. I lived in a rural area outside, can't even read my own writing, outside a forest in a little round stone house. And I've looked at these stone houses and they all date back to the time period that I was given. We had a very small garden. We were very poor, not much clothing, and a very small amount of food. We feel like the clothing was sort of animals, so I'll get onto that now. Actually, sort of like animal clothing. It sounds a bit caveman-y, but we was poor. It's probably all that we could afford. I was actually a hunter of some kind, some sort of hunter. I was an archer. I was doing archery, so I feel like I maybe hunted for the food. I went and hunted animals, for food, for clothes, that sort of thing. And I remember sort of being, or I envisioned being like arrested or charged with some sort of crime. I was taken away from Clementine and Jezebel, which obviously was upsetting. I felt the emotions. It was like, why is this happening? Really, really, really strange. And the images are clear as day. And then I remember being in this sort of stone room, a room that's sort of stone, with other people in there, sort of waiting for something. It was cold. It was quite dark. And then all of a sudden, I was in sort of a church, and there was a big, huge stained glass window in front of me. I can't really describe what was on it, but I remember it being it was a big church. It even could have been a cathedral. It was a huge church. And I was sort of there being held by two men, like under my arms. So I'm sort of, sorry about that, but not answer cage of it. So I was being held by two men under my arms. So I must have been a bit, trying to escape. I felt like I was. I wasn't happy at all about being in that church. And this bishop or pope came out, and he was blessing me, telling me to repeat all these things, blah, 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 blah. And I was very angry. I was saying, I am not. I remember in my head I was saying, I am not, which I'm guessing I wasn't. Maybe I didn't believe in the Christian religion. I was like, no, I'm not. I'm being really sort of adamant, and I really wanted to get out of that church. I was not happy, and which kind of makes sense in a way, because obviously I'm not Christian now. I'm pagan, so maybe I was pagan in that past life. Maybe I was pagan in because everybody's meant to have lots of past lives. So I feel maybe I was pagan in this past life, which might explain why I am now. But yeah, and I remember going into, this is where it gets quite interesting. This is where I amazed myself. And then I remember going into battle. I weren't a soldier, but I was sent to battle. And I remember being an archer. So I don't know if people, or I was seen hunting animals and someone's sort of gone, he's really good with that. We're going to need his help. We'll get him in the army. Because obviously I don't remember having any sort of job, which is why we were poor. I was hunting for the food for the family. So I don't know if I was if there was some sort of war brewing up and they needed men, and I was sort of spotted with me, being an archer, and they've gone get him. So maybe I went to the church to be blessed before joining. I don't know. It's a bit blurry, but like I say, the images I had in my head were very clear. And it turns out the battle that went on, maybe the battle that I was thinking in my head, there was a battle between 1321 and 1322, and the year I had in my mind that came to my mind was 1321. It was called the Dispenser War. So definitely do some research about that. I'll not do it all there because there's a lot to it. But a lot of people think, oh yeah, let me guess, you was killed. No, I weren't, because the year 1328 came to mind. So I couldn't have been killed. I must have survived that war, because I remember that year. But after that, it sort of faded. I got a bit agitated, starting to ache a bit. So I just naturally opened my eyes and came out of it. But that's interesting. For 42 minutes, I came out with all that. I think that's quite good. And as clear as it were, the names, the years, what I was wearing, what I did, the church, the stained glass, and obviously the battle. It turns out there was a battle, which obviously, and it was in the north of England, which I felt like it was where I was in there. So it's interesting. So if you're interested in that sort of thing, definitely give it a go. these past life things, because it's very interesting. Everybody's meant to have multiple past lives, and maybe I don't feel like it was my imagination, but maybe that is one of my past lives that I've had out of many. So I definitely want to try and do more and try and figure out more. So if I do find out more, I will do another video about it and talk about it. But other than that, I think it's amazing. Absolutely amazing. You know, there's definitely something. Loads of people's got different accounts and stories, so it's got to be something, especially when what the thoughts that you've had in your head add up, when you know your way around somewhere that you've never been, and someone else gets in touch that feel like they know you and they know everything that you know. It's especially things that you've probably not spoke about, but yet they know. There's got to be something. But yeah, thanks for watching, everyone. A new video will be coming very soon. I might do a little bit more reading, unless I do another past life and some more information comes to mind, then I'll do a video on that. But keep your eyes out for it, and we'll see you soon. Bye bye.